Saturday View with Ronan Berry. With thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcloonEnergy.com. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
Hello and a very good morning to you. It's Saturday the 21st of December. I'm Ronan Berry and you're very welcome to Saturday View here on Midlands 103. Coming up on the show this morning, we'll look into that 9% rise in domestic abuse-related contacts that have been made to the Gardaí. That's over 61,000 domestic abuse-related calls received to date in 2024. And as I said before with Aidan Barry, unless you've been under a rock for the past number of months, you could not have noticed the amount of female deaths that have happened, linked to domestic abuse all over the country as well. It's absolutely shocking at a time of year where a lot of focus goes on to the joy and the happiness around Christmas. But for a lot of people, it's a tough time of year. It's a lonely time. It's a time where people are experiencing loss. And now we know there's a number of families ripped apart, kids missing mothers, families missing daughters, cousins, aunties, whatever it might be, all linked to domestic violence. We'll look into that a bit more. What's behind that 9% rise? Should that be treated as a positive, or should we really begin to throw a spotlight on the problems that are out there around domestic violence? Also, later in the show, we'll tease it out. Eyegrass, do you know what it is? Is it the latest in farming technology? Is it a new flooring solution? Or is it a mix of Irish and bluegrass music? Well, if you were tuned in last week, we had a very special music number at the end of the show, and who knows, we might just do something similar again this morning. If you want to be part of today's conversation, 083 3010 103 is the text and WhatsApp number. Always happy to have your messages. A little bit later on too, we'll give you that question for the Midlands 103 Advent Calendar. It's day 21 already. Fantastic prize on offer. I'll bring you details on that very, very shortly. But to begin this morning, we're going to try and stitch together a story that involves ambulances and fire engines moving from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania up to Kampala in Uganda. The Japanese government are involved, the Ugandan government is involved. There's a huge amount of money being raised also for a hospice in Africa, and a lot of this is to do with some Irish people, and not just Irish people, but people from around the Midlands. So I'd like to introduce you this morning to Tom Doyle and to Luke Carberry, who've joined me in studio, and very shortly we'll talk to Miriam Donoghue on the phone as well. Tom, good morning.
Morning, Ronan. Thanks for having us in.
Tom, that's some teaser I've put out there for people. Yeah. Take us through, I suppose. There's two aspects to this story.
Yes.
The emergency service vehicles, what's happening with that, and what's your own involvement?
Yeah. So, Ronan, there's a group of us that got together some years ago, and we helped facilitate a donation by the Japanese government to the Ugandan government of emergency vehicles. So in Uganda, there was a real shortage of ambulances and fire engines. If your house went on fire, there was nobody coming to put it out. If you were ill, you got put in the back of somebody's car to bring you to hospital if you were lucky. Certainly, ambulances and fire engines just they weren't a thing there. So we went out about 4 years ago and we delivered a fleet of about 15, mainly fire engines, small number of ambulances, and they've been working there ever since, and they've made a huge difference. This year again, the Japanese government have very kindly donated, free of charge, 15 vehicles. These are vehicles that are at the end of their useful life for the Japanese government. They have very tight laws around emissions and the age of vehicles on the road out there. So they give away what are perfectly good vehicles. Some of the fire engines might have as little as 5,000 kilometres on the clock, and maybe 4 or 5 years old. So they have a whole new life awaiting them in Africa.
They've almost taken us back to the late 90s when there was a huge amount of Japanese cars imported.
Yes.
In absolutely immaculate condition.
Yes.
A key thing obviously on it, they're obviously right-hand drive vehicles then that can be moved from Japan
Correct.
into Uganda.
In Uganda they drive on the left side of the road as we do here, as they do in Japan. So yeah, it's exactly they're exactly suited. And the Japanese are very kind in terms of the equipment, everything. When you get an ambulance, it's just a vehicle, and there's a huge amount of expensive equipment involved with an ambulance or a fire engine. They make sure that they're all fully serviced and fully equipped and ready for use. And within 2 or 3 weeks of us delivering them, the Japanese will send out some paramedics and some firemen to train the Ugandans on how to use these things so that they're used properly and successfully in Uganda.
It's a nice trip, I'd say, in terms of the mileage from Dar es Salaam up to Kampala.
So the last time we did it, we shipped the vehicles into Kenya, and we drove from Mombasa, Kenya to Uganda, to Kampala. This time we're going in through Tanzania, only because we had real difficulty clearing the vehicles in Kenya through customs. We have better contacts in Tanzania. One of our group is actually from Tanzania originally. We lost about 3 days on the last trip, and it meant that we were still driving fire engines in Uganda, and some of the guys were looking at their watches and saying, my flight to Ireland leaves in 3 hours. One of them at one point jumped out of the fire engine passenger seat and up on the back of a random passing motorbike to get a guy to just take me to the airport and I'll give you $10 kind of thing. So this time we'll be better organised. It is, it's a humanitarian trip, but also it's a very interesting trip for us as volunteers. We'll encounter some challenging terrain, I'm sure, along the way, but also some of the most beautiful and breathtaking scenery that the planet has to offer. So it's there's a number of satisfying aspects to this.
How did it first come onto your radar? How did you start getting involved with it?
So there's a group of us friends centred around one very good friend of mine, a gentleman called John O'Kelly. John and I worked together in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for many years. Another gentleman called Willie Nagoya, who's the Tanzanian gentleman. Willie married a lady from Japan, ended up living in Japan. So I suppose it's just a set of circumstances that kind of threw us all together. And then there was another friend of ours, a bit of an adventurer, an airline captain called Ambrose Blaine. Ambrose, as he had travelled the world, had identified in Uganda actually a charity, Hospice Africa, and he was part of the group, and that drew us to the second part of what we're doing. Unfortunately, Ambrose died about 3 years ago. He's no longer with us, and so part of what we're doing this time around is really in memory of Ambrose.
So the next part of that is raising vital funds for Hospice Africa as well. Luke, I'm going to bring you in for a second. Your involvement, were you dragged in by Tom into this, or how did you first get involved with moving ambulances and fire engines through Africa?
Yeah, this only happened maybe 3 weeks ago. I got a telephone call from a friend of mine, Kieran Walsh, which is also involved in this. And he asked me, would it be good for going for a spin abroad, and I said, yeah, put the name down. I spoke to Deirdre, which is the wife, and she says, yeah, go on. You have the time, do something in your life other than working all the time. So yes, we spoke with Tom. He sort of said that it was quite safe, maybe not much bother. So yes, I jumped on board, and I'm looking forward to the adventure.
So an adventure for sure, I suppose. It's something different, but I think Tom is kind of just touching it briefly as well. It's the impact that a small gesture or like a donation of a piece of kit, and we're going to look at the hospice now in a second. Was that something that struck you, Luke, that how such a small gesture can
I would have not done much in the past because I was always seemed to be working my whole life. Now that I have an opportunity, I have the time, I have emailed all my friends and told them to put all the money they can to this great donation, and as I listened to Tom talking, it's even give as much as you absolutely can, because these people have nothing. If they get sick, their really life is ending, and for here we live like kings all day, every day, so I'm so looking forward, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to give something back at once in my life.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful as well, and that leads us really to that second piece, Tom, that you're using the fact that you're moving the emergency equipment throughout the country to kind of raise a profile, but you've started a huge fundraiser. Already it's exceeded your expectations, because I think the message is getting through to people that like even a few euros makes a huge difference in people's lives. That leads us on to that story around Hospice Africa and Hospice Africa Ireland. How did that first, you were, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say maybe it's an important point. So we have about 30 of us going out on this trip. Each one of and there's a huge variety of people, there's bakers, butchers, candlestick makers. We have a few guards in the mix. Ken McGreevy was on the previous trip with us. Ken's a Dublin-based detective, good character, and he's brought along some of his colleagues on the trip, or rope them in for this time around. So that'll bring extra dynamic to the group. But one of the important factors is each individual person, each volunteer pays all of their own costs. So we each spend of our own money probably somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 euros to do this. So we pay our own flights, we pay our own food while we're there, we pay our own accommodation. So we then looked at what we could do. We visited Hospice Africa in Uganda. We met a real powerhouse of a lady, Professor Anne Merriman, a lady with strong Irish connections who had been in Uganda in the 90s. And as a medical person, she noted several things. One was that the life expectancy in the early 90s for the average Ugandan was 38. And most Ugandans in the course of their lifetime would never meet as much as a doctor or a nurse. So if you got sick, you died. That was really your lot. And she wanted to change this. And so she founded Hospice Africa. And we visited the hospice on our previous trip out. And so we decided this time around we're going to be there. You know, we're 30 people. Surely between us, if we reached out to our network of friends, family, business connections, whatever it might be, that we could raise some money for Hospice Africa. Initially, and Miriam will go into more detail on the work, she's heavily involved with Hospice Africa, but initially we thought, you know, if we could raise 5,000 or 10,000, wouldn't that be fantastic? And it would be fantastic. So about a week ago, we each put up a post on our social media, and we each began sending out text messages to family and friends, and I'll apologise to any friends and family of mine that I've been harassing looking for donations. But up to about an hour ago, when I last looked online, we've raised just over 51,000 euros, and I would dare to dream and wonder, with a little bit of help maybe from listeners there today, could we raise 100,000 euros for Hospice Africa as part of this? If we did, it would be amazing, and it would be life-changing. If you get terminally ill in Uganda, without somebody like Hospice Africa, the reality is that there is no treatment, there is no palliative care. You will die a pretty awful death without access to pain relief. And that's the big thing that they're doing. They're manufacturing morphine, and they're giving care to people at the last stage of their life and allowing them to die with some dignity and supporting their families and all of that. So we're, as Luke said, we all live so well here, and we take things like that for granted. So it's a great opportunity to make a difference for families over there, yeah.
Well, that sum already, we can imagine, will make a huge difference. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail now with Miriam Donoghue. And Miriam is a highly experienced senior communication professional. She's over 35 years in journalism and PR, and over the last 5 years in particular has worked in the international humanitarian and development aid sector. And Miriam joins us now. Good morning, Miriam.
Good morning, Ronan, and to Tom and Luke. Great to be here.
Miriam, can you take us through a little bit more about what for Hospice Africa Ireland and what the funds that the lads have already raised, the precise impact that can potentially have in Uganda?
Ronan, we are absolutely overwhelmed in hospice at the funds that have been raised so far by the guys who are doing the convoy. And it is going to make a massive difference to our operations. And first off, it's going to help hospice increase the number of patients that it can see on a daily and weekly basis. For example, we have started doing outreach clinics in slum areas in Kampala, and with extra funding we can have possibly more nurses. We can provide more of these clinics and reach more people. And Tom put it very well, but I first went out to hospice as a volunteer 8 years ago. I went out with the intention of staying for 2 months to give Dr. Anne Merriman some advice on communications and fundraising. I booked a return flight from Dublin to Kampala and back. But after 4 days, I rang my two more or less adult children and I told them, Mommy's not coming home. I was so taken by the mission and the cause that I stayed for almost 10 months, and I've been back regularly since then, and I'm heading out in January actually for a year. But I'd put it to you like this, in Uganda, more than 90% of people with cancer will not have treatment. That's because they might be living in very rural areas, there's no access to health services, or they don't have the funds to pay for treatment. So therefore, if people have cancer, those cancers develop. So in hospice on a day-to-day basis, you would see people coming in, with some very distressing tumours, people who are so ill and weak. And not only do they not have treatment, but they don't even have the privilege of a diagnosis. So hospice comes in at this point to support the patients and their families. We deliver the care in people's homes. And our main sort of weapon, if you can say, is we produce oral liquid morphine on site in hospice, which eases patients' pain. And what really grabbed me and got me so involved was when, in my first few days, 8 years ago, going with nurses on patient visits. So, they go out every morning in a van. The nurses bring their oral liquid morphine, and we go to a patient's house. And patients, most of them are living in the direst of poverty in very poor areas. So you might have somebody who is near their end of life. Their bed is a dirty mattress on the floor. Children hungry, no money to send children to school. It's really horrific, and it's hard to describe how bad it is. But for me, when the patients and their families see the hospice nurse arriving with their pain relief and with their care, the eyes light up. No matter how sick the patient is, their eyes light up, and they know that they're going to be pain-free until the next visit next week. And that means patients can die in comfort and in peace and in dignity. And it is so special to see that. And after a while, you get over seeing the tumours or the really serious illness, and you that bypasses you, and you see the human being who's there and who needs care. And hospice not only provides practical medical care and pain relief, but also supports families in other ways. So we have a comfort fund, and some of the money raised by the guys will be so helpful in terms of providing patients with food when there's not enough food, maybe school fees, maybe medical supplies. For example, on my last visit, there was a patient who needed a colostomy bag, a stoma bag, and she spent her last Ugandan shillings in desperation to get a boda taxi, that's a motorbike taxi, to hospice, because she didn't have fresh stoma bag and she was using a plastic bag for several days. So, which was infected. So, the money that's been raised will just improve the lives of so many people. And, it's very rare that hospice, the structure of hospice, it's got a board in Uganda, Hospice Africa Uganda. Dr. Anne Merriman, the founder, she was born in Liverpool of Irish parentage, but she came to Ireland in the 50s, joined the Medical Missionary of Mary's nuns, and they sent her to UCD to become a doctor. And that's the Irish connection. So she, until she was in a position where physically she doesn't fly anymore, she's 89, but she came to Ireland every year, and she built up a huge network of support in Ireland. And there's a board in Ireland. It's a registered charity, Hospice Africa Ireland, and we fundraise for Uganda. So monies raised will go directly to Hospice Africa Ireland. And then with agreement and with discussion, it'll be decided how that money will be specifically spent. But there's so much money being raised, way beyond our dreams and expectations, that next year is going to be an amazing year for hospice. And all of the guys on the convoy and all your families and friends know that every shilling is going to help. And $25 a month is enough to keep a hospice patient supported.
I think that figure in particular will resonate with listeners. If you try to even do a comparison with what it might cost here in Ireland,
you wouldn't buy 2 gin and tonics for it, or one in Dublin.
Probably not. Well, I can see the two boys' phones are lighting up in front of them as well. Tom put a call out to see would they double their funding and get over the 100,000, and I'd say that has started already. But yeah, €25 to keep a patient in hospice care for a month in Uganda, it's quite staggering. Is it a case though too, Miriam, that if you have money in Uganda, you'll get probably the best medical treatment you can get out there, that there's a big discrimination against people of a lower income?
There's a huge gap, Ronan, in wealth. I mean, the really super wealthy will probably go to Kenya, to the Aga Khan Hospital in Nairobi. A lot of wealthy people go to India for their cancer treatment, but there are some very good, top class private hospitals in Kampala where people can go. But I was recently again in the main referral, the main national referral hospital, Molago Hospital, in the capital. It should be like, I suppose, St Vincent's Hospital in Dublin. And I was shocked because, it's chaotic. Certainly doesn't seem to be very clean. Patients queuing up, patients lying outside under the sun. And this is the main public treatment centre in the country. So they have a long way to go to increase their health services. And in fairness, the Ugandan government, Dr. Anne introduced palliative care in Uganda. Part of her mission is she has there's an education institute on site where healthcare workers from all over the continent of Africa are trained in palliative care. And having started that, the Ugandan government are now embracing in palliative care, and they are actively working to increase palliative care services throughout the country. So that's really good news as well.
Now, absolutely, it's incredible work too, and Fazzy, the progress is being made, and undoubtedly those funds will make another significant difference. Miriam, thank you so much for that this morning. Thomas, I was back to yourself and Luke. When does this adventure begin for you, and how can people get involved and give you what you need, more cash?
So just one point maybe to follow up on Miriam there is that Hospice Africa Ireland, every penny that we're raising that goes to them will actually go straight through to Uganda. There are no admin costs or anything else like that. So this is 100% benefit direct to the patient. In terms of when the whole thing kicks off, so the fundraising has already kicked off about a week ago, and we'll continue that until we finish the delivery of the vehicles. We leave Ireland, most of us leave about the 30th. A couple of guys going out earlier to try and facilitate getting the vehicles out of customs. Red tape and bureaucracy, sometimes in third world countries, is not simple. So there'll be some work to be done on that. Luke and myself, another gentleman with Midlands connections, Kieran Walsh, who is listening. Kieran is the man behind Simply Baked in Tullamore. So the three of us and a few other members of the group leave on the 30th of December. So when everybody else is getting ready to ring in the new year, we'll be heading out to ring it in a fire engine. So we arrive in on the 31st, New Year's Eve, into Dar es Salaam. We'll be there for about 2 weeks. The drive will take about 8 or 9 days. It's about 2,000 kilometres. Some of it, like I say, we in previous trips we encountered areas without road surfaces, lots of it, which slows you down quite a bit. And maps are not great and stuff like that. So we try and confine, for safety and other reasons, confine our driving to daylight hours, and find safe havens for places to stay and all of that. In terms of how people can get involved, really there's one way. If anybody's ever there's two ways. If anybody's ever interested in taking part, we're wide open to volunteers. We'll do this again probably in a couple of years' time, and the more the merrier. But in terms of this year's trip and helping Hospice Africa with the current fundraising, you can donate some money. Every euro helps. 25 euros, as Miriam said, will give pain relief to a patient for a month. Anybody can donate. I know the station here is going to put up a link later on social media. I am on certainly Facebook. If somebody wants to look me up, Tom Doyle, I'll have a link up immediately after this. If anybody knows me, reach out. Luke Carberry beside me used to be Mr. Palfinger until he stepped down recently, or Kieran Walsh, Mr. Simply Baked. Any of the three of us, or there are 27 other volunteers along with us. You may have heard from somebody, maybe you got a text or WhatsApp message and ignored it. You might go back through, reactivate, click on the link and make a donation.
And it's all there on the iDonate as well. And like you said, even 25 euros makes a huge difference too. Yeah. I have a funny feeling you'll hit that €100,000 target, and next week you'll be out looking to double it again.
Fingers crossed,
lads, it's an incredible achievement so far. I know it's already exceeded your expectations, but kind of when you hear coming from the ground there with Miriam as well, your own experience having been there on the convoy of emergency vehicles before, the difference it makes. And I guess from everybody, thank you for doing this as well and showcasing what can be done. Tom and Luke, thank you so much for that. And to Miriam, Miriam Donoghue, who was on the phone there earlier. Time for a quick break. After that, we'll look at how and maybe look at why the number of calls and contacts to the Gardaí related to domestic violence has been on the increase this year yet again.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
Lots of people texting in there about, I guess, the mission, the adventure, the fundraiser, whatever you'd like to call it, that Tom Doyle and Luke Carberry and a team of almost 30 people are about to undertake, moving emergency vehicles donated by the Japanese government. They're going to arrive in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. They have to be brought and driven then up to Kampala in Uganda. And before the break, we were hearing about the difference that makes even on a day-to-day basis, that previously if your house was on fire or there was an issue, there was no vehicles or no service to help you or rescue you. We then developed that into looking how the guys have already raised over 51,000 for Hospice Uganda, and that is making an incredible difference in people's lives. And put quite simply, people who would have passed away from cancer in extremely painful, horrific conditions are now at least being afforded some dignity and some level of pain management at end of life. And Miriam Donoghue told us how €25 can keep somebody in hospice care in Uganda for 1 month. And if you do a comparison back to Ireland, it is quite staggering as well. We've had loads of texts coming in just about it. A few people very interested. Tom, they're wondering who's actually driving the fire engines. Will you drive one yourself?
I will, yeah. And there's a bit of fun. I shouldn't maybe say this. There's a bit of fun in all of that, and the fire engines are all fully equipped, so traffic wasn't a challenge. Let's say as we were on the road, we were able to kind of make our way through it. People were pulling over and letting us through, so we had good progress all the time. But yeah, everybody will drive. Some of the vehicles are bigger vehicles. Some of them are trucks, and some of the ambulances are smaller. They're kind of the size of a transit van or something like that. So some of the guys maybe won't be licensed to drive the bigger vehicles, and some of us will. But we'll rotate, and everybody will get a chance. We'll have 2 people per vehicle. It's very tiring, driving on poor roads in a big vehicle like that. So we'll rotate drivers during the day and all that kind of stuff.
Do you bring a maintenance team with you then?
So we were lucky this time. Well, we were lucky.
The Japanese would be disgusted to hear me saying that.
Yeah. So we were lucky the first time, in that we only had one small problem. One of the ambulances developed a problem on the previous trip, and we just left it and arranged a local mechanic, and we were able to hire a driver. And then miraculously one morning we arrived at a hotel, or we woke up at a hotel, and it was there outside, repaired and ready to go. A bit like a scene from Top Gear when it all goes wrong and then gets fixed again. This time around we're lucky. A gentleman called Dave Carney, who is one of the AA roadside rescue team, has joined us. So when I say that we have a great mix of people, we actually have an AA rescue man with us on the trip. So presumably he'll be the go-to. And there's other guys, I suppose, varying degrees of mechanical expertise. Luke, I know, is very good with a set of spanners, I believe. So if something goes wrong, I think he said 2 vice grips.
2 pair of vice grips, yeah.
So something goes wrong, Luke will have his 2 pairs of vice grips on hand. Yeah,
it's fantastic. No, look, it's a wonderful way of combining what is a bit of an adventure, but having such a huge impact for people out in Uganda too. And look, it sounds like this is only the 2024-2025 version. It'll continue for years to come as well.
Yeah.
Listen, lads, again, congratulations on what's been achieved so far, and the very best of luck both with the continued fundraising and also with that convoy adventure as it takes place into the new year. Luke and Tom, thank you so much for that this morning. I'm going to take a quick break after that. So we have a slight little shift in schedule there, but after the break we're going to bring you, bit like we did last week, but a really, really special musical treat as we begin to round off 2024. Talk to you very shortly.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
Just a reminder now, Aidan Barry would have opened it up earlier this morning, the Midlands 103 Advent Calendar. Today we've a great prize, a pair of tickets for the Whistling Donkeys and a 3-course meal in Luker's restaurant overlooking the River Shannon in Shannon Bridge. How do you win? You probably know how. If you don't know, go to midlands103.com. No texts, no phone calls, no emails. Go onto the website, click on the link and answer the question: how many ghosts visit Scrooge in A Christmas Carol? Is it A1, B3, C9 or D6? Now, little bit of a disclaimer there, right? We can dispute what the answer to that is. Click one of the answers that's online. let's say if it's not 1, 9 or 6, which one might you click? But you have to go online, fill in your details, and you could win those tickets. Anyway, moving on to round out this show. Last week we had a musical treat. It turns out we have another local band who are here to kind of play us out again on this morning's show. You probably know the name. They're Jig Jam, and I'm joined in the studio by Jamie McKeough and by Dahi Melia and by Ciara McKeough too, and they're going to play us out on the show with some fantastic music. I suppose, Jamie, it's been a good year for you?
Yeah, it's been busy now, yeah. We spent most of the year over in the States now, just got home last week, and Dahi only got home there 2 days ago, so we have a gig next week in Tullamore just to top off the year, which is always great to play, you know, in the hometown on the 27th in the Court Hotel. So yeah, it's been a good year now, and we're happy to play a couple of tunes for the local folks here now next week.
We're really looking forward to it too. But I mean, it has been a great year in terms of, I mentioned at the start of the show, iGrass, kind of Irish bluegrass is what it stands for, and you really are making waves over there. I mean, you've played in some significant venues, you've been at things like Delfest as well, so you know, good ground being gained, particularly in that area of America where bluegrass is king.
We, you know, I suppose every year you're always progressing, and you're playing in bigger spots every year you go back, and we're in the bluegrass scene now, and I suppose as the Irish band it's nice to be the different band with something. You're bringing something else to the table that I suppose the Americans don't have. So obviously bluegrass music over there, you know, there's so many great musicians and great bands, so we try to be the band that is bringing something different to the table. So, you know, it's paying the bills at the moment. But
it's which is key to it, because I suppose like any band, there was a couple of years there where it was probably touch and go, to say the least, given the restrictions and that.
Yeah,
but I know on the show last week, Shane Lynham referred to like the music that Rula Bula play. Said, you know, 10 years ago people weren't interested, but that it's shifted so much out there now as well. There's an opening for so much kind of folk, string music, bluegrass.
Yeah, you know, I suppose bluegrass and that kind of Americana music is getting quite popular these days, with the likes of, you know, Tyler Childers, Zach Bryan, Noah Kahan, people like that are bringing this kind of acoustic folky stuff to the pop culture, which is great for us. You know, we can try and ride the wave of that as well. You know, we're in the same kind of wheelhouse as that kind of music, so it's great, I suppose, to know that that's getting popular now, and we can try and make the most of it, you know, while we can.
So, what are you going to play for us this morning?
We're going to play The Boys of Offaly, which is obviously a song that we put together just, I suppose, for the crack a couple of years ago when Offaly won the under-20 football. Myself and Ken Malloy, a friend of mine, wrote lyrics to the Fisherman's Blues, which is a Waterboy song, and it never intended to be anything more than just a bit of a laugh, but kind of took off here in Offaly. And then when the Hurlers won this year, we changed lyrics to cater for the new team, and we're going to be putting it online in the next few days, I'd hope. But we're going to sing the new version of The Boys of Offaly, if I can remember the words.
No bother, take it away, Jig Jam, The Boys of Offaly.
Thanks very much. All right.
Well done on reworking that so quickly. You're saying it's going to be released in the next day or so, and well done in remembering all the words. Not an easy one to do, but top class. Just a reminder, that gig again is Tullamore Court Hotel, December 27th. How can people get tickets for it?
If you go to the Jig Jam website, jigjam.ie, you'll find the ticket link there as well. So
nice and simple. And if you're on that website, actually check out the video of the guys playing in the Grand Ole Opry earlier this year, with a brilliant bluegrass version of the Wild Rover. It really gives you a sense of the type of band they are. Look, massive thanks as always, guys, and all the very best for 2025. I want to say a big, massive happy birthday to Martin Gormley Jr. from Ballinasloe, celebrating his birthday today. A huge Offaly fan too, and undoubtedly a fan of Jig Jam. And actually, when we mentioned the Offaly under-20s, if you're in the Bridge Shopping Centre in Tullamore over the weekend, they are selling a really special book there. It's kind of a pictorial record of the year that was, and actually throughout the day there's various members of the panel there signing copies of the books, and actually it passed through yesterday. We're signing jerseys, hurls, drinks bottles, anything that kids had going past, so definitely worth checking out, and all money goes towards the Offaly Player Development Fund too. So listen, thank you all for listening again. I'll be back next Saturday to round off the year on Saturday View. Thanks as always to Nelly, and I suppose maybe for the 30-40 seconds left, Jig Jam, will you give us a bit of music there to play us out?
Yeah,
take it away, guys.
Saturday View with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com. Midlands 103.